known people are familiar with the one. That is why they have their own body design, having a very good appearance and limits. But most of the time they used to use blood and especially in the cow, and they keep in the blood. The blood is the central unit during the circumcision period as a rite of passage to them. So most of the time, most of the people still embrace culture in Kenya are the Maasai. People think that Maasai are the people who occupy Kenya, but that is not true. Maasai people, they are just part of us, a different community, but in as much as they are part of Kenyans, they are the only community who still embrace culture up to today. That is why they are widely renowned up to today. When a word is cut into two, it forms a calabash. We have a very big calabash there, signifying our government. So the calabash can be used as a cup or a plate to eat or to drink. So the half of a word is a calabash. And the figures that are descending downwards, they signify some of the things that as a country, we are trying to pull closer to us, like fighting corruption and having good governance. Then the ones that are diverting outside, they signify some of the things that as a country, we are trying to do away with completely, like female genital mutilation in early marriage in some of the communities. Because some people still practice some of the FGM activities, despite the government making a statement that it is not supposed to be taken in action, but they still do it. So they are trying to fight it in as much as it is something illegal in Kenya. This one is called from the beautiful butterflies. It used to be made by the Maasai boys. They used to go to the forest, hunt for these beautiful birds, then they plant the pets in the next ceremony. It used to be worn around the face 8 days before and 8 days after the circumcision period. Some of the birds are beautiful birds like this one. It is called the golden oriole. It is among the beautiful birds because of the color, the plumage. Then we have the national bird of Kenya here. It is called lilac-breasted roller. It has 8 distinct colors, signifying 8 provinces that we had initially, but currently we don't have the provinces, we have the counties. Then we have the long-tailed widow bird, the black one with the long tail. Among the beautiful birds and a very unique bird because of that long tail. Then we have the guinea fowl here. This is a guinea fowl. Some people domesticate them at home together with the chicken. It's a very friendly bird, but not easy to catch. They usually lie very fast and they make some noise. So typically for to be able to catch it, they use a tactic of beating them a little bit. When it is somehow busy, that is where you can be able to catch it. So this was only here made from the feathers, used to be worn during the circumcision period among the Maasai boys. And most of these birds, you'll be able to see them later in the Hall of Birds. Because we have some pure species of different birds here in the museum. Tribes settled in the Lake Victoria regions, and they were the ones who used it during traditional ceremonies, maybe ushering in a newborn baby during a very good harvest or a traditional wedding. Most of the time they used to play this musical instrument in combination with other traditional musical instruments to be able to tune. Currently, because of the modernized musical instrument, somehow they do not embrace it anymore, because it is among the unique musical instrument which needs some of the traditional skilled musicians. So I can say that they still use it, but deep in the rural areas, but we still have it in some rare areas, like maybe 1 or 2 families, but still it is there. And it being a musical instrument, it used to produce the sound boo. That is where they got the name Abu. Yeah.
What holds those together?
Yes?
What holds those together?
Wax. Wax. So
Wax.
Yeah, they connect it together using wax.
You good? Just know that you're live on YouTube.
The butterflies were put randomly and they are in the shape of the map of Kenya, not according to where they were plotted, but just randomly. The one at the center signifies the where the equator passes through here in Kenya, but these 2 brown ones, they're not butterflies, they are moth, and somehow they are poisonous. So they were placed this way, having the beautiful colors, signifying some of the beauty of our country, Kenya. And this is just a sample of them. We have over 900 species of butterflies here in Kenya. So for you to be able to get the whole sample is not really easy, but they were able to get a number of them from the different specific species to give the beauty of our country, Kenya. So this is how we represent the beauty of our country, Kenya, by putting the beautiful butterflies. called a sambu or a sambu, this clock. It is made from the skin of a Cyprus monkey. This is the Cyprus monkey. But the white part is from the Columbus monkey. This cloth used to be worn by the Palestinian leaders. Most of the time they used to dress in it as a political cloth, like during political occasions. For you to be recognized that you are a leader of a Kalenjin community, you're supposed to have this cloth with you. And most of the time they used to dress in it in a specific way. Having such a cloth signifies that you are actually powerful in the community. That is why you're supposed to have such a cloth with you. And most of these clothes currently are just like souvenirs because we don't have the leaders anymore. We have the government. That is what is among the unique clothes that we have ever had in Israel. So when you visit a Kalenjin family, Kalenjin is a tribe settled in the western parts of Kenya, where we get the fast running athletes. One of them a very famous man called David Kipchoge. And our current president, Mr. William Samoei Ruto, we found him from the current Kalenjin community. So they are among the communities that we have in Kenya, but Kalenjin specifically is where we need to dress in this cloth. So like I said earlier, we don't have leaders or elders anymore, we have the government. So they don't dress in this cloth anymore. This one is a musical instrument called siwa. It was used in the Swahili community. It is made up of ivory and brass, but this is the mouthpiece where they used to blow it from. It had supernatural powers. Whenever it fell down and broke, that was bad omen in the Kema. That is where the name came from actually. And the African elephants are the ones which are very many here in Kenya. The species are so many. There are two species of elephants, African and Asian. So the Asians went extinct, we don't have them anymore. This is because they used to feed on grass alone. Later trees started growing, and that is why they ended up dying because of starvation. Favoring the life of the African elephant, which feeds on grass and leaves, that is why the species are so many. But the horns of a normal elephant are usually this way, having some short and small horns. But this elephant it died at the age of 55. It used to be called Mohammed bin Sabit, and it was a unique elephant because of the heavy tusks. One tusk weighed 68 kgs. So it used to climb the mountain in reverse because of the heavy tusks. And it used to be found in the Marsabit area. But some of the causes which might have killed him is because they found a bullet inside the lungs, meaning somebody had tried to do poaching from an aeroplane. So it was among the endangered species because people wanted to get the heavy horns. Also, when an elephant is born, they are born with 6 sets right front foot, meaning somebody had tried to hurt him so that he cannot run, since they wanted badly to get the horns. So very heavy. They are very unique elephants which have the heavy tusks like Ahmed, but a normal elephant has this type of tusks. Then Okapi there. So being a relative of the zebras because of the stripes, but because a very unique species, we do not have it in Kenya, found in Congo.
My favorite part of that copy.
Okapi.
18-inch purple tongue.
Yeah. Actually, it is among the unique species in terms of the appearance of the tongue also. But I think it's because most of the time they are found, whatever they feed on is what keeps them to have such a characteristics. Then we have a giraffe there called the Maasai giraffe. A very common giraffe here in Kenya, but there are 3 species of them. We have reticulated, Rothschild, and this one being the Maasai giraffe. You can differentiate by the appearance on top. Having the leaf-like patterns is the characteristics of the Maasai giraffe. So then the Rothschild, they usually have a white color from the knee to the feet, looking like they are wearing a white socks. Then the ones that have the polygon shape is called reticulated. So the hippos are among the territorial animals. They believe that water is their home. No human should be there. That is why they kill to a maximum of 500 people in a year. But their teeth are not made of calcium like ours. They are made of ivory. So in a way, they are very unique because of the teeth. And because of the buoyancy body, that is what enables them to float on water, not to sink. And most of the time, they usually swim in water, keeping the body a bit wet, not too dry. Because when it is dry, it usually cracks, forming the wound, whereby the insects trigger the wound, then they feel uncomfortable. So the hippos, they are semi-aquatic animals. During the day, they are found inside water. During the night, they are outside water. And that is one of their basic characteristics.
They're a lot faster in the water than you think.
Yeah. Then we have marshmallows. muskrat, spot-necked otter. So the three animals mostly they are found in swampy areas. By the help of the oily fur, that is what enables them to dry easily when they leave water. And also you can notice that they have some webbed feet. That is what enables them to swim easily in water. And mostly they are found in swampy areas, not like a lot of water. Then the aardvark and the naked mudlark. So for the aardvark, they have a long sticky tongue, which enables them to feed on the termites in the ground because they usually burrow under the soil using the sharp claws. And then we have the naked mudlark here, a small one. They burrow under the soil this way using their strong incisors, and that way they make their pathway as they feed on the small insects. So for this animal, we borrowed the knowledge of making the tunnels from them, the naked mudlark. Because if they could make their way under the ground, then we made the tunnels for the train to pass through. Then here we have the spring hare, cliff springer, and cheetah. So for the spring hare, mostly they move by hopping. Looks like a kangaroo somehow, but they don't have a pouch. But for the cliff springer, mostly they move by walking, and mostly they are found in rocky areas. But by the help of the rubbery hoofs, that is what enables them not to slide whenever they are walking. So having the rubbery hoofs is one of the characteristics which is very unique to them. Then here we have the cheetah. Cheetahs can run up to 120 kilometers per hour, among the fast running animals on land. But there is a main difference between the cheetah and the leopard. It's the tear marks on the face. This one. The bats. So the bats are nocturnal animal, only active during the night, not during the day. But I can say that they are somehow blind. They move by flying. But Lord Darby moves by gliding. This is where we borrowed the knowledge of paragliding. So we made the paragliding instrument. Being nocturnal animals, they use the sense of echolocation at night to locate their prey. And most of the time, sometimes in terms of movement, they keep flying from one tree to another in search for their prey. But for Lord Darby glides. So typically, this is where we got the knowledge of paragliding. Then the mountain gorilla. So mountain gorillas are very so they usually live in cold climatic condition. By the help of the fur on the skin, that is what enables them to survive in cold climatic condition. And it is believed that one flap of a gorilla can damage a human scalp, and that is how strong they are. Then here we have the two photos. We have the Asian elephant and the African elephant. So the two elephants, there's a correction in the painting. Asian is supposed to be smaller than the African. Because the Asians, even in the Asian countries, they keep them in the parks because people usually ride on them. And they are very small in terms of body size. And there's a very big difference in the shape of their ears. So these Asians are the ones who went extinct in Kenya. That is why we're not able to get the real bone of the skull. This one is just a replica. But this one is the real bone of the African elephant. Then we have the warthogs here. The warthogs are, I can say that we usually forget in 90 seconds. They are among the ugly animals because of the warts on the face. For them, they are somehow united. Whenever there is danger, they run, the tail facing up, to signal the others there is danger. But whenever the environment is cool, the tail faces down to show a cool environment. But for the bush pig here, being in the family of the pigs, they usually call the tail as a specific adaptation of how they usually, just like the normal pigs. And because of the short neck, they usually kneel using the front limbs to reach the grass, but they don't feed on grass alone, they feed on grass and snails. This one?
Hello.
We have the chimpanzee. Chimpanzee are among our close cousins, which share almost 98% DNA close to them. And somehow insane. And that is actually the main difference. But in terms of the food we eat, the human photo was placed there, feeding on meat and vegetables. There's a slight difference in that their food is like raw, ours is cooked. And for them, they feed on bugs, sometimes the leaves and flowers. Then we have the olive baboon and the vervet monkeys. They are found somewhere called on very tiny in a way. They feed on small mice after burying under the soil to get them. And in the family of the dogs, then we have the hyena. Hyena, there are two species of them. This one is the spotted, the other one is striped hyena. And hyenas, they are scavengers. Mostly they usually feed on the meat completely, even the bones. And because of the bones they feed on, they excrete on a white excretion. So you can tell where there were so many hyenas by the white excretion which is there, because of the bones they feed on. Then we have the circle cat here. They can jump up to 2 meters high to catch the low flying birds. And they are in the family of the cats, but somehow very big. And it looks somehow like the leopard. Then we have the leopard itself here. So for the leopard, like I said earlier, the main difference between him and the cheetah is the tear marks on the face. And the leopards, mostly they run very fast on top of the tree. Some people call them brave, some call them selfish. This is because the leopards are brave. After hunting, they go and feed on top of the tree to avoid scavengers like the hyena. But being selfish, they don't share like with just any other animal. Most of the time, they share with their young ones. Then here we have the because animals twice bigger their size. You can find the lionesses on top of the giraffe trying to hunt for them, and most of the time this being the lioness is the one which usually does the hunting. But for the lion itself, mostly they remain behind to take care of the territory. But in terms of a lifespan, the male lion is shorter than the female. So for the male, they live to a maximum of 8 to 10 years. Females is 15 to 16 years. And you can tell the age of a lion by the color of the male. So the one that has the dark brown color, like the fur is actually so many on the head, that is an old lion. So we say it as the darker the male, the older the lion. The more they grow, the male becomes so many, having a blonde color.
There it is. And look at the youngest one. The two hordes are always right next to each other and very long. That's what someone saw it from the side and they thought it was a unicorn.
There is danger. Then here we have the spiny mouse, this tiny one. They have sharp spikes. Whenever a predator feeds on them, they usually keep them at home as pets because they're somehow friendly, but they are shy because whenever there's danger, they roll to form something like a ball to defend themselves, exposing the small spikes. Sometimes they can get instead of throwing them.
Fight back.
Then here we have the horns of Greta Kudu, that one. So Greta Kudu, some people call them stupid animals. This is because they fight by locking the horns. To an extent, they are unable to unlock the horns. Stabbing each other with the sharp edges, they die. So typically they usually fight among the males, especially during the mating season to impress the female. But there are the different shapes of the horns, and some of the animals having the horns, they fight in different ways. Maybe through stabbing, or maybe through wrestling. For example, at the far end we have oryx and oribi having the sharp horns, and the buffalo. They fight by wrestling using the horns, completely even the bones, the body. And that is how they usually defend themselves physically. But among the male animals fighting during the mating season, it is something common, especially when they are trying to impress the females. Then here we have the chemical defense mechanism. This one is the stripped weasel. They have a gland at the back, which enables them to produce a pungent smell towards the enemy to defend themselves this way. Like a skunk somehow. So this is how they defend themselves chemically. Then here we have the crested rat. They usually enlarge their bodies. You might think it's a very big dangerous animal, but it is just the enlargement of the body to defend themselves. That is their common, unique of defending themselves. So I wish to get out of for the history of Kenya.
I think I need some music. This is what we want. This is what we want.
This part is interesting.
Yes. So it is the history of Kenya. Yeah, so it is divided into three. We have, let's wait for.
All right, we're waiting on you.
Yeah. So the history of Kenya is divided into three parts: pre-colonial, colonial, and period. And some of the different things which happened before we were colonized in Kenya. And in terms of colonization, most of the East African countries like Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania were colonized by the same country, which is the British. And the Britain came to colonize us. After colonizing us, we ended up gaining independence consecutively, 1961, 1962, and 1963. But Kenya was the last country to gain independence among the three East African countries, like Uganda and Tanzania. So typically, this is where we have the pre-colonial period. Initially, we had some people like the Kuria Maker. She used to be consulted whenever there was a long drought season. That is when she would put an empty pot on top of the head this way, face the sun, and eventually the rain will come. Like they had the supernatural powers to even predict and communicate to the weather in a way. So these were the rainmakers. They used to be consulted, especially during the drought season. And this one is a sample of the pots she was using initially. Wealth was measured by the number of children or wives you had initially. So having so many grandchildren, then definitely you are among the wealthy people because you're supposed to be financially stable for you to be able to take care of the big family. So having so many grandchildren, then definitely you had so many children. And for you to be able to take care of them, not in terms of money, but in terms of lots and lots of livestock and fertile lands. That is when you are categorized as a wealthy man. Then we have division of labor among the Maasai. They used to divide labor among themselves, like 50-50. So for the women, they used to go to the forest to fetch for the firewoods. Then men, they used to go to the field to take care of the livestock. And up to today, they still do the same thing in terms of dividing labor among themselves. Then this is how teenage girls used to dress traditionally. They believed in covering the front part alone. The rest of the body was not nudity to them until when they had performed the FGM to them, like the female genital mutilation. That is when they acquired the social status of being among the mature girls. Then they covered the whole body because they were about to become somebody's wife. In cultural aspects in Kenya, when a girl just has been circumcised in the different communities, they used to give this girl off for marriage to an old man, maybe of 60 or 70, because they refer to them as mature girls. Then there was scarification of the body this way, using some hot needles. So for one to sustain the pain of the hot needles, that one included that they were brave. But for women, it was like a traditional tattooing. But for women, it used to be done on the belly this way. Like they used to cut the belly, making some different shapes to expose it as a form of traditional tattooing for them. And most of the time they used to expose it until when they have been proposed to, or maybe they are about to get married. That is when they cover the whole of the body. Then this one is a Kuria elder, the one behind you. So the cloth is made from black and white Columbus monkey skin. On the right arm is carrying a flavis. So most of the time when you met such a person initially, because he was among the leaders you were having, you're supposed to like kneel down and they bless you using the flavis, because they had some of the, like they're giving you a portion of their blessings. And most of them, they were just elderly. They were people of age 60, 70 and above. So definitely they could bless you in a way or maybe pass you. Then here we have the blacksmith. They used to smelt iron and make ornaments like this one. Then they used to sell them to most of the leaders, especially the elders in the community, because they were the ones who were capable of buying them, since they were actually among the rich people. Because there was no money in Kenya, they ended up giving them like cowrie shells or ostrich eggshells beads, sometimes the bulky salt slabs. Those were the things they used to like trade with. But the most common one was the cowrie shells, mostly found in the beach. Then we have the musicians. They used to be invited in the different ceremonies here in Kenya. Then they used to play this musical instrument like the lyre, a bow, and the flute. Sometimes they would play some of the musical instruments to give a very good tune. And because it was actually a ceremony, it was like an economic aspect to them. Playing the musical instrument, then in exchange they were paid, and they were not given like money or maybe the items I've just mentioned. They were just given food as appreciation. Then we have the girls. This is how the teenagers used to dress in traditionally, and they used to wear the wooden ornaments. But after marriage, this is how they used to dress in. So they did have ornaments, and this is a married woman covering the chest also, and most of their attires were made from the animal skin. The Somali people used to earn a living by carrying goods on top of the horses. Upon arrival or delivery, that is when they used to be paid financially. It was like their economic aspect to be able to transport goods because we never had vehicles initially. Then there's a tribe called the Akamba people. Akamba is a tribe which settled in some of the coastal parts or central parts of Kenya. And most of the time, they used to be like long distance traders. They used to transport goods from the buyers to the sellers. They were like the intermediaries during the marketing seasons. And because they were like interacting with the different communities, they used to earn a living in a way. Like they used to be able to earn something in the process of transporting goods, being the intermediaries. And they were able to acquire some of the skills to make some of the attires like the skirts. So for them, the only community were able to cover the front and the back part for the first time. But for the rest of the community people, different tribes, they believe in covering the front part alone. Kenya used to exist, but it did not have the 42 counties in it. Different tribes in Kenya have their specific origin. The first inhabitants, or maybe the descendants of Kenya, were called the Boni and Ogiek. Later, they were followed by these three linguistic groups. The first group were the Nilotes. They came from South Sudan, followed the River Nile. Then they settled on the shores of Lake Victoria, where we have the peach color on the map. So the Maasai, the Luo, the Pokot, and the Turkana settled in the shores of Lake Victoria because they were actually focusing on fishing. That is why they settled on the shores of Lake Victoria. Later we had the Bantus, who came in large numbers. Then they came from Congo Basin through the Lake Victoria to the central, western, and the coastal parts of Kenya, having the yellow color on the map. And they settled in the most fertile lands, especially in the western parts, because they were focusing on farming a lot. Actually, most of them, they were like agricultural people. Then lastly, we had the Kushites. They came from Ethiopia through the Horn of Kenya. Then they settled on the northeastern parts of Kenya, having the blue color on the map. And they were the ones who came to do livestock keeping. So they were looking for water and pasture. And that is what led to them settle in Kenya. Then we have the green color here. So the Arabs came to do trading in Mombasa. Then they found the coastal Bantus already there. And because there was language barrier among them, they decided to form one common language, which was Swahili. They started speaking Swahili in this market because it was the only market. So they ended up learning it slowly by slowly. And anybody who came from the different parts of Kenya to do trading in Mombasa because it was the only market, they would learn the Swahili language and spread it all over. It became the national language of Kenya. So this one here is a replica of Mount Kenya, centrally located. It used to be called Mount Kirinyaga initially. Kirinyaga means a sacred place, and that is where their god used to settle. This is Mount Kenya. In some parts of the Agikuyu. So most of the time they used to worship, pray, and facing Mount Kenya. And true to be told is that whatever they prayed for used to be answered. So Mount Kenya is among the second largest mountain in East Africa, but the largest is Mount Kilimanjaro. We share it with Kenya and Tanzania, but Tanzania is where they have the biggest portion. So Mount Kirinyaga, later the British came to Kenya and they were unable to pronounce Kirinyaga. They named it Kenya, and that is where our country name generated from ever since. So later we had it as Mount Kenya, and actually it became our country name eventually. This is Kisumu market. After having the Mombasa market, it was moved to Kisumu. And most of the time they used to do like barter trade, transporting goods from the buyers to the sellers. It was like a give you my maize, you give me your beans. These are the items they used to exchange in this Kisumu market. For you to be recognized that you are a leader of a certain community, you are supposed to have these items with you. We have the walking stick, the tobacco snuff, the flies, then we have a headdress here. It used to be lied on by the nomads. Nomads is a community like maybe the Maasai and some parts of the Turkana who never settle in one place. They move from one place to another in search for water and pasture. So eventually they need somewhere to lay down and rest. Mostly they usually lie on this headdress because they believe that it is even healthy to their body. It strengthens the backbone. And for them, they make it from the tree and they carry it around because they value it. They prefer lying on this but not on a pillow up to today as we speak. This way. Arabs were already in Kenya, and they had already spread the Islamic religion. But later, Lovecraft found, he was able to approach this family called the Ishmael family, and the Ishmael were interested in the gospel. So they ended up being transformed from Islamic to Christianity, and these were the documents they were given in exchange. But they were fighting something called slavery, so they wanted Lovecraft to help them fight it. The person who used to do slave trade, the biggest slave trader, used to be called Mohammed bin Najib, or the nickname is Tipo Tipo. He used to collect the slaves, place them in Shimoni caves, before they were taken to Zanzibar for slavery, and that is why most of the time they used to take the slaves to do the slavery. But sometimes they used to pass in some parts of Mombasa and in some parts of Nairobi, and this is how they used to do it on this photo. So they used to move from Nairobi to Mombasa by foot, carrying the ivory. You can imagine weighing 50 kgs. Whenever you ask for food or the water, you are beaten or tortured this way. Their children were lured with sticks to follow their parents wherever they were going. They were tied with chains, some on the feet, some on the necks, so that they cannot end up escaping. And that is how the slavery used to happen. And the people who used to beat them were the agents of Tipo Tipo. So after having the Berlin Conference in the year 1884 to 1885, that is when Kenya became a protectorate country among the 3 East African countries. So protectorate, it became like Berlin was held so that they can divide Kenya peacefully, Africa. So they divided us that way, like a presentation of the photo. So these are the British who came to do like the colonization, but they came indirectly. Then they went specifically to the Maasai land. Then they lied to the Maasai people because they chose the Maasai since they are the only people who could be lied to easily. Then they lied to them, please give us your fertile lands. In exchange, we are going to protect you from slave trade. And because the Maasai people needed their help desperately, they ended up signing these documents as confirmation that they had given out the fertile lands, so they ended up being landless, just because they saw these people carrying the guns. True to be told is that the Maasai people ended up being landless, and they were never protected from slave trade. So the fertile lands which were taken by the British led to these businesses here. Come closer. So they began most of these businesses because a company called Imperial British East African Company, which used to support them financially, went bankrupt. So they began most of these businesses because they were not able to survive in Kenya without money. And most of the businesses are like the Unga Limited, Bacon Company, Current Blessed Coffee Farming, and they came in with their own breeds. Unga is a company which processes flour. In Kenya we call unga in Swahili flour, in Swahili we call it unga, which is like grinded maize to make flour. So this company used to process flour. And because they needed some means of transport to transport some of their items they had processed, they ended up making some of their pathways like the railway. And these businesses led to the construction of this railway. So this one was constructed from the year 1896 to 1901 by the Indians, because earlier Kenyans had a very bad encounter with the British. So they told them that we're not going to help you guys. The British brought in 38,000 Indians to construct the railway from the year 1896 to 1901. But in the process, like over 2,000 Indians used to die because of malaria. Some of them used to be eaten by the man-eaters. Since the railway passes through Savo East and Savo West National Park, the lions used to come from the park and feed on them. Some of them died because of most of the diseases, but in the process there were others who were able to survive. So they went back to India. But 6,000 were left in Kenya after 1901. Then they constructed shops along the railway, started selling some of these spices and these fabrics. So these are the items which were very settled in Kenya in terms of doing business. Then we have this man here, Mullah Jivanji. He was a philanthropist and an entrepreneur from Pakistan, and he came purposely to do trading in Kenya. But he is the one who donated the Jivanji Gardens, a garden which you have in town, only because he wanted to unite Kenyans. He was able to give them because he felt like that is where they can be able to do some of their public meetings, to be able to solve out their issues. So these 4 people here are our traditional leaders that we had during the colonization period. So we have Nyabogo Mumia, Wango Makeri, Ole Sentio, and Lenana. Some of them collaborated with the British, some resisted, some of them had like mixed reaction. For example, Nabongo Mumia and Lenana collaborated with the British. Ole Senteu and Wangu Makeri resisted. So Lenana and Ole Senteu were brothers from the Maasai community. So Lenana collaborated because he wanted to overthrow his brother Ole Senteu, who was a leader of the Maasai. So Ole Senteu learned about Lenana's plan early enough, so he took the resisting Maasais and flew to Tanzania. And that is how we ended up having the Maasais of Tanzania and the Maasais of Kenya. Then formal education was introduced in Kenya. This is when British were colonizing us. They could not understand English. None of the Kenyans was educated. So the British introduced formal education because they used to pass rules to Kenyans, but no one could be able to follow them because they never knew English. So they decided to teach them in some of the schools, like the Taita School, Fortwell Guard School in the coast, and some school in Kabete. These are the schools which they were able to teach them some of the English and vocabularies, and they were able to learn. Even the adults used to go to school because they were supposed to learn it in the process. And I can say that it was effective because most of them were able to learn slowly by slowly. Then in this church called St. Paul's Church in Rabai is where they were singing this hymn book, because as much as they were able to understand English, they were able to be introduced this hymn book, which they used to sing with in this church. So the First World War happened from the year 1914 to 1918, and Kenyans were recruited in the war corps. This is how they were doing the career coping, carrying some of the weapons for the fighters, and most of the weapons they were carrying the weapons for the British. And you can imagine you're in the middle of the war, but some of your friends are being shot dead. Some of them are just dying automatically because they cannot be able to sustain the whole torture. Some of them, they never used to be given food, so they ended up suffering in the whole process. They were carrying some of the heavy weapons with them, but they were having the guns with them, but they could not defend themselves using the guns during the First World War because the people who were fighting them, they were superior, having the natural, like the strong and the good weapons to fight back. So most of the Kenyans, like 50,000 of them died out of 195,000 Kenyans who were recruited in the First World War as carrier corps. Later, after the First World War, 1918, from 1918 to 1919, a disease called influenza. It attacked some people from the Gikuyu land, and it killed a maximum of 120,000 of them. This is because they were congested in one area out of fear, so the disease ended up spreading very fast in a very short period of time. When you do the calculation, it's a maximum of 170,000 Kenyans alone who died in the First World War. So having the British in the war, fighting with some of the other countries like Germans, Russia, the British, like the British were able to win in the war. So they took us, Kenya, and divided us into different regions, like the provinces. This is the Divide and Rule Act. They divided us so that they can have easy ruling, and each and every province had a British leader. But, in as much as they had some of the leaders, they were looking for a very good means of transport to be able to carry their goods from one province to another. And each and every vehicle, maybe car, had this number plate. So the first car to be introduced in Kenya had this number plate, meaning on Her Majesty's service or on His Majesty's service. So whenever you met such a vehicle, you're supposed to like stand, you wait for it to pass as a symbol of respect. But the truth is that Kenya became a fully colonized country in the year 1920. Then these are the leaders who collaborated with the British here in Kenya. They were promoted to become paramount chiefs. They were given these items as a symbol of leadership. They used to sit on this stool. But whenever they were given a task to perform, like they were supposed to spy Kenyans, then they give information to the British colonial government. And whenever you provide a valid information, they used to be promoted from a three-legged stool to a seat. Something called kipande was introduced in Kenya by the British. Kipande was like an identity. It used to be worn on the neck like a necklace. Mostly it used to be carried by the Kenyans who were working in the white settlers' farms. White settlers were the British who are now part of us. So if you are a Kenyan person aged from 16 and above, you are having such a kipande with you. And inside the kipande, there were the details of the white settler you're working for, the location, the name, and also a small photo of you because they had introduced this first camera here in Kenya. So this one was just like a small identity of yourself. So because there was a lot of persecution in this farm, they used to work for long hours without even being paid very well or even being given food. So most of them tried to escape. Whenever you try to escape, at the border of the province, there were British officers. They used to check inside this kipande, see the details of the white settler you are working for, then they return you back there by force. Then they introduced something called tax payment in Kenya. These are Kenyans paying tax, and these chiefs are the people who collaborated with the British collecting the tax. So they started working with the British to collect tax here in Kenya, but it was like there were two types of tax, hard tax and poll tax. But there was hard tax. Hard tax depended on the number of wives a man had. If a man had like 5 wives in one homestead, each and every wife has their own hut. So you're supposed to pay the tax per hut. So you work the whole day in this farm, whatever you earn, you go and pay it in form of tax. So definitely they never had enough money to take care of the family. We were divided into classes according to financial status. We had the upper class, middle class, and the lower class. For the upper class, we had the Europeans, which were the rich. They used to go to European hospital. Currently, it is known as the Nairobi Hospital. It's a private hospital. They used to live in the European housing. They were the ones who introduced the estates in Kenya. They used to play the polo game during their leisure time. They used to listen to gramophone most of the time. Then middle class were the Indians because they were part of us. They used to go to Aga Khan Hospital, still called Aga Khan. They used to live in the Asian housing, and they brought the same design from India to Kenya. Then they used to play these tabla drums during their leisure time, and in these chess boxes where they used to keep in their documents and jewelries. Kenyans were the lowlights of that time, or in other words, poor. They used to go to King George Hospital. Currently it is known as Kenyatta Hospital, and it is actually a public hospital. They used to live in the African housing, some slums in Nakuru, but currently the biggest slum in East Africa is called Kibera, after Soweto. Then they used to dance during their leisure time. They used to play this hand piano, this drum. Sometimes they would enjoy the bow game using some marbles. Even in terms of education, even in terms of education, they were not allowed to be in the same category. So for the boys, they used to go to Duke of York Secondary, and this school currently is known as Lenana Boys, and it is actually a national school here in Kenya. But for the Kenyan boys, they used to make their own beds, doing carpentry most of the time. Then girls, they used to go to Asian Girls Secondary. Currently it is known as Pangani Girls, and it is also a national school. But for the Kenyan girls initially, they used to study under the tree. Some of them doing the carpentry work, some of them studying outside, only taught basic and arithmetic knowledge. Then for the first time in multiracial school, they were allowed to mingle in the same class, Kenyans, Asians, and Europeans, but not just Kenyans. The children of the Kenyan chiefs who collaborated, they were the ones who were supposed to be with them in the same class, but under one condition, they were not supposed to be seen talking to each other or interacting and sharing things, since they were not from the same category in terms of finance. Now, later it led to the Second World War. The Second World War happened from the year 1939 to 1945, and Kenyans were recruited in the war this time as fighters. So the British lied to them for the second time. Please fight along with us. In exchange, we are going to give you back your fertile lands and money. And because they desperately needed that, they ended up considering the request. So they fought along with the British. But to their surprise, after the war, they were given the gramophone, sculptures, and medals. No fertile land. The fertile lands were given to the British. So that led to them start fighting back, and they formed a group called Mau Mau. Mau Mau means a British person to go back to their country, a Kenyan person to gain independence. That was the theme of the group. But because British could see the anger on the Kenyan faces, they decided to select 2 Kenyans to represent us in the Lancaster House Conference in London. But they felt like, no wait, 2 Kenyans are very few. But as Kenyans were thinking on what to do, they remembered something. It was during this Second World War, a British person was shot dead, then they fell down and blood started coming from the skin. And that is how they got the courage to start fighting, because earlier they thought these people are supernatural beings, they cannot even die, because of the skin color and the dress code. So seeing this person falling down and die, that is what gave them the courage to form the Mau Mau fighting group, and they never they stopped following the rules from the British completely. But the 2 Kenyans who represented us in the Lancaster House Conference in London, they were the delegates who were educated at that time. The people whose fathers were who collaborated with the British. They were the ones who got the opportunity to go to London. Lancaster was like a court case to negotiate for the return of our land and maybe our country in general. So they decided to negotiate. The two of them felt like they were very few, and they decided to write a memorandum in the year 1951, requesting that they should be increased maybe to a maximum of 8 Kenyans. And the memorandum was accepted. But again, being 8 members, they felt like, no, we are very few. They requested that they should be increased to actually 23. This is in the year 1957. And after being increased to 23 members, that is when they were able to negotiate very well, and it was actually a win. Because it happened, it started officially 1961 and 1962. Then 1963 we gained our independence as a country. This one is the Hariduku massacre. It is a scene which happened here in town. Hariduku was among the freedom fighters, and he was arrested by the British because he was going against them. So Hariduku, being a member of the Mau Mau fighting group, after he was arrested, a brave woman called Nyanjiru dared 8,000 Kenyans to go and fight for the release of Hariduku because he was arrested and he was kept in the central police station that we have in town. But upon arrival, 20 of the Kenyans were shot dead instantly by the British, just because they were demonstrating and fighting for the release of Hariduku. This is a real scene which happened just here in town, near a hotel called Norfolk Hotel. Later we had a leader of the Mau Mau fighters who was called Dedan Kimathi. Dedan Kimathi used to be a brave fighter. He used to fight wearing his shoes facing backwards. His shoes had the same appearance from the front and from the back. So you cannot tell whether this person is going to the front or to the back. He used to cover himself with a leopard skin after attacking using these guns, because most of the time he used the guerrilla warfare. So he used to attack, then he goes and hide on top of the tree, and that is how he used to fight most of the time. Dedan Kimathi used to dress in these attires, but there's a day he was not successful. He was shot on the feet, then he was taken to Kamiti prison. Kamiti is the biggest detention camp that we have in Kenya, actually the biggest prison. And this is where he was hanged to death. He was killed by the British, but before he died, he got a lot of torture. Like, he was even pulled down on the ground all over the streets of town. Like, after being tied on a vehicle from the back, like pulling him down on the ground. That is what led to him having a lot of torture. So he ended up dying in Kamiti after being hanged to death. So Dedan Kimathi, before he died, he would see his death coming. So he wrote these letters requesting that the family should be taken care of. The wife should be released from jail because she was also arrested since she was covering up for the husband, and the son should be taken to school eventually. So he wrote these letters knowing very well he would not be available. So Dedan Kimathi, being among the Mau Mau fighters, unfortunately he was not able to make it for the future, so he died eventually. The head was the only thing presented to the family. This is because they wanted to tell them that the person is actually dead. And that is what was done by the British. These are the British trying to arrest some of the Kenyans who they suspected they were a part of the Mau Mau fighters. They never knew that for you to be a Mau Mau fighter, you're supposed to have the dreads that way. So this one was their leader. So for you to be a member of the Mau Mau fighter, you're supposed to have the dreads as a recognition. But at the corner there we have a woman. The only one woman called Field Marshal Mudhoni, but one. She was the only woman who fought along with the men during the Mau Mau fighting rebellion. These guns were made by women who wanted to support the men who were fighting in the Mau Mau membership. So the guns were made of wood and metal. They never had a bullet inside. They only had needles, and only effective when you're close to the enemy. But somehow they're not eligible to make such guns. Then you have this man here, called Waruhi Itote. He was a best friend to Dedan Kimathi. He stayed with a bullet in his chest for 34 years. When Dedan Kimathi was shot on the feet, he was shot on the chest. Then this is the bullet. It was removed in the year 1988. But in 1993 is when he died. He died while he was still working in his farm in Olkalau. Since the body damaged, the bullet had affected his blood circulation in the body.
You said he had like 34 years?
Yes, 34 years. Something very unique and very uncommon. So for him, he died later after Dedan Kimathi, but he was a best friend to Dedan. This is Kenya gaining our independence 1963. It was like a celebration to us Kenyans. This man called Munyao, because he was very happy, he got to the peak of Mount Kenya, Batian, 5,188 meters high. He placed the national flag of Kenya, showing that we have the birth of a new nation. And this is the last governor from the British who used to rule us. giving the power to the first president, Mr. Jomo Kenyatta. His name was Malcolm MacDonald. Then these are the British officers boarding the aeroplane, leaving for their country. Then these are the Mau Mau fighters putting down their guns, showing that they want nothing but peace. And this is our national flag, which was introduced by Mr. Jomo Kenyatta, our first president. And the meaning of the flag, having the different colors, is black is our skin color, red meaning blood, which was shed during the fighting, green meaning vegetation, white meaning peace. Then there is a shield at the center, meaning you can defend our country. Spears, meaning you can fight back to defend our country also. Then we have some white cowrie shells at the center. Those were the currency we were using before money was introduced. Then this is the real presidential seat. It was donated by the Moi family here. Actually, it had this sign from the government, mostly seen on the passports. So this sign here meaning the word Harambe, pulled together as a country. Then the backbone of our economy here in Kenya is agriculture. So we have some vegetation here. Then the two lions signifying tourism. Then we have the shield for defense, spears to fight. Then we have a cock, this one. The same way the cock crows in the morning, the same way you're supposed to wake up very early and go to work. That is what the cock means at the center. 1964, Mr. Jomo Kenyatta was sworn in Kenya after he was elected in the year 1963. This is him being sworn in, and this is his deputy, Odinga. But Odinga has always been in the opposition party ever since. That is why up to today, his son called Raila Odinga is still opposing the government. He ran recently for the presidential seat, but unfortunately he was not able to get the seat because he has been opposing the government. Then this is how our parliament used to look like. Then initially we never had secret ballot boxes for election. People used to queue behind the person who wanted them to become the president. But because corruption began way back, immediately, the person who had the shorter line used to pay the person who was counting to announce them as the winner. Yet there were people who had the longest line. So I can say that corruption began immediately after gaining independence. And this is the passport which was introduced by Mr. Jomo Kenyatta, our first president, who used to look this way. After announcing the winner president, they used to be given these medals. Later, Mr. Jomo Kenyatta died in the year 1978 in Mombasa because of some illness. Then he was replaced by Mr. Moi, the one having a clock on his body. Mr. Moi was into culture, and most of the time he used to practice agriculture. So Mr. Moi was our second president and the long-ruling president. He ruled for 24 years. Then later he stepped down because he took advantage, because in the constitution we never had a rule that a president should be in power for 2 terms. That is why he ruled for the longest time. And actually was planning to stay there for life. But unfortunately, after he drafted the constitution, he had to step down. Then we had Mr. Kibaki. Kibaki was our third president, but himself he stayed in power for 2 terms. This is his beautiful wife. We have the dark moments here in Kenya. So dark moments happen like to signify some of the different things here. For example, whenever you went against our government Kenya, you are supposed to in a way, you are taken care of by being tortured. For example, they used to be taken to the Nile torture chamber. This is where they used to be electrocuted, sometimes be denied food, sometimes be beaten. Some of the people who are not encouraged to be in Kenya, in as much as they were not Kenyans, like Pioga Mapinto, who used to go against the government. So later he ended up being tortured in a way, and that is why they were not given the opportunity to keep supporting the government. And even most of the Kenyan leaders who were going against the government, during the reign of our second president, Mr. Moi, these people ended up being tortured to death. And the only person who is alive is Raila Odinga, the son of our first deputy, President Odinga, and Ngugi wa Thiong'o. These two are the only ones who are still alive as we speak. The first ship to be used in Kenya, which used to transport goods among the East African countries via the Lake Victoria. It is called the Victoria ship because mostly it used to be to transport goods in the Victoria area where we have the Lake Victoria. And these are the 3 presidents for the East African countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. They decided to collaborate in working because after gaining independence, we were like one country. Actually, the first currency we were using, having the Swahili writings, we were sharing it among the 3 East African countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Then we have the second largest airline after Ethiopian Airline is the Kenya Airways. The first aeroplane used to look this way, having that color. The current one has these colors. Then Mr. Moi used to practice agriculture. That is why he invented a tea Nyayo zone in the year 1986. And because tea is our main export in Kenya, despite the British colonizing us, we transport almost 70 to 80% of tea to their country. Then this one is the first bank in Kenya, the Kenya Commercial Bank. It used to be called Gramlays before we gained independence. Then later, after the government bought like 100% share in the year 1970, they named it the Kenya Commercial Bank, but it is the current national archives that we have in town. The backbone of our economy after agriculture is tourism, represented by the wild beast migration. Wild beast migration happens from the month of July to August, and late August to early November, whereby the wild beasts move from Masai Mara to Serengeti in Tanzania, then from Serengeti in Tanzania back to Kenya, and it is usually survival for the fittest because some of them are usually eaten by the crocodiles as they cross the river. Some of them usually give birth in the process. It is among the 7 wonders of the world, actually the 7th. This one is a very good industry, a very unique industry here in Kenya. These items are usually made under hot climatic conditions for different purposes. For example, the pans and the pot used in the kitchen. Then you have a blue home bank there. Then this wheelbarrow used in the farm. There's a traditional iron here, mostly used to operate having some hot charcoal to iron clothes. Some of the things that make us be recognized as a country in Kenya, we have the Saki beaches in Mombasa. These are the cowrie shells I was talking about earlier. So these are the cowrie shells I was mentioning earlier. These are the currency we were using before money was introduced in Kenya. So whenever you get such a cowrie shell, then you are financially stable eventually. Then these attires are usually given to the winner athletes when they come back to Kenya as winners after running in the different countries to represent us during the marathon, or maybe running most of the time. This is a gift which they are by the government. Then we have these pieces of fabric worn by women in the different communities. For example, we have this piece of fabric called a leso, and it has a proverb written. In Swahili we say it as heshimu mume wako, yeye ni barafu yako. Meaning in English is respect your husband, he is your ice cubes. So the husband is the only person who can cool the wife down whenever she's angry. Swahili men used to communicate by such a buying this attire for them as a gift. So this one has been their mode of communication up to today. So by buying this attire, most of the time they check on the proverb written. Then we have a Maasai sheet for the Maasai, having the red color. They usually have it painted red because they believe that red is a color of unity among them. Then we have these Maasai shoes here. There's a fact about these shoes. Whenever they are burnt by the sun, because they are made from tire, the smell of the rubber scares the snakes away. That is why they usually wear these shoes up to today, because they are found in areas where there is a lot of snakes. So if the snakes feel the smell, then they just stay away. Then this is a view of Kibera slums, the second largest slum after Soweto in East Africa. Then a view of a business city in some parts of Meru County here in Kenya. Then here we have a business center in town. The 3 religions that we have in Kenya: Christianity, Islamic, and Hinduism. But Christianity covers almost 60% compared to Islamic and Hinduism. Initially, we never had universities in Kenya. People used to go to Makerere University in Uganda to advance their academics. But later we had the Nairobi University being the first university here in Kenya. But it was still a college before it became a university. Then we had the Kenyatta University named after our first president, Jomo Kenyatta. And Moi University named after our second president, Mr. Moi. And these are the professors who used to teach in those universities. Then we have something about this man, this old man. He was the only man who went to school at the age of 88 years, only because he wanted to read and understand the Bible. That is why he went to school when education was made free in the year 2003. Then we have Mr. Jomo Kenyatta. Most of the time he used to say Harambe. Harambe meaning pull together as a country. And when you are told Harambe, you respond Nyayo. Nyayo meaning working together as a country. And this is Mr. Kibaki, our 3rd president, launching this place when it was relocated here in the year 2008. Last but not least, Mr. Jomo Kenyatta and Mr. Moi, 1st and 2nd president, decided to give people back their fertile lands accordingly after getting independence in Kenya. So they gave them, if portion. Up to today, he is dead, but the family still owns the fertile lands as we speak. So that is the history of Kenya. Yes? It's a matter of practice. Yes. Yeah, so this one is another destination having the cycles of life. Cycles meaning in a normal Kenyan's life, maybe a normal human being, when we are born, especially when a child is born in the community, they are named after somebody who died in the community, just because they resemble them in characteristics, to continue the life cycle of that person. So here in Kenya, they usually do, in terms of talking about cycles, somebody dies, then the child is born, they're named after that person to continue the life cycle. But in other words, they're named according to season, personality.